Charles left for work early again. No kiss, no goodbye. The silence between us stretched longer each morning, like some quiet pact neither of us wanted to break. We used to laugh over burnt toast or argue about whose turn it was to take out the trash. Now we barely exchanged words. His face was always buried in work, and his touch had been absent for months. I stopped asking questions. You can only knock so long before you realize the door's been locked from the other side. David moved back in after university ended. He brought energy with him, bright, loud, and unapologetic. His girlfriend, Ella, came too, needing a place while she finished her thesis. I was hesitant at first, but the house had been too quiet for too long. David filled it with music and jokes. He hugged me every time he walked through the door, called me Mama in that teasing tone that made me feel younger. He'd always been affectionate, but something was different this time. His hugs lingered just a second too long. His compliments made my cheeks flush. "You don't look a day over 30, he said once, while I was still in my robe, hair a mess. I laughed it off. I told myself it was harmless, but I caught myself watching him walk away more than once. Ella was sweet, soft-spoken, always, cleaning up after him. She'd sit at the edge of the couch, legs crossed, quiet while David and I talked. I wondered if she felt left out, or if she even noticed the way his attention slid back to me, again and again. One night, Charles came home late and found us laughing in the kitchen. David had just told a ridiculous story about a night out, and I was laughing so hard I had tears in my eyes. Charles stood in the doorway, expression unreadable. Then, without looking at either of us, he said, "Well, at least someone enjoys your company these days." I froze. David glanced at me, amused. I tried to change the subject, but the words stayed with me. There was resentment in Charles's voice, not anger. Something worse, distance, disapproval. The next morning, he left before sunrise. I found his coffee mug still full in the sink. That week, I started waking up earlier, just to have a moment alone. David would come down around mid-morning, hair messy, still shirtless. He'd make breakfast for both of us, brushing against me in the kitchen. "You need to eat more," he said once, feeding me a bite of scrambled egg. I shook my head, smiling, and told him he was too much, but I didn't stop him. I kept reminding myself I was his mother, but my body didn't always listen to my mind. That was the first warning bell, and I ignored it. Grace came over for lunch one afternoon. She noticed right away. "Your house feels different," she said, sipping her tea. "More alive." I smiled, telling her it was nice to have David around again. She tilted her head. "Ella seems quiet. Everything okay there?" I shrugged. I didn't know. I hadn't asked. Later that day, I walked past the mirror and paused. I looked good. Better than I had in months. Maybe it was the way David looked at me, like I mattered, like I wasn't invisible anymore. That night, I stood in the hallway after everyone had gone to bed. David's door was cracked open. I could hear him whispering with Ella, laughing softly. I turned away quickly, heart pounding. I wasn't sure why. The house wasn't quiet anymore, but it wasn't peaceful either. Something had shifted, and I felt it, deep in my chest. Charles started traveling more, sometimes gone for days. He said work needed him, but I didn't ask questions. The house felt different when he was away. Less restrained, more alive. David and I shared quiet mornings and late-night talks. We slipped into a rhythm I didn't expect. One evening, we ended up watching an old movie together. I laughed at a joke, and he turned to me and said, "You should laugh more. It suits you." I didn't reply. I just felt it sink in. Ella spent more time in her room. She avoided eye contact. When I asked if everything was okay, she said she was just tired. But I caught her once watching David and me from the hallway. She said nothing, but her silence said everything. David had stopped calling me Mama. He used my first name now, Helen, said it like a secret. He brushed hair behind my ear when he spoke to me. Once I wore a new dress, and he stared for a second too long. "That color's dangerous on you," he murmured. I felt my stomach twist. I told him to behave, but my voice didn't carry conviction. He started bringing me small gifts. A candle that smelled like the beach. A silk scarf I'd mentioned once in passing. "You deserve nice things," he said, brushing his fingers against mine. I didn't pull away. I didn't tell anyone. There's a point when guilt becomes familiar, when the wrong thing feels safer than the empty space beside you. One night I was drying my hair and the door creaked open. It was David, holding a glass of wine. "You look tired," he said, handing it to me. I asked where Ella was. He said she went to bed early. We talked, sitting at the edge of my bed, too close. He reached out, touched my shoulder. I froze. He leaned in, and for a heartbeat, I let him. Then I stood up, heart pounding, telling him it was late. He didn't argue, just smiled and left the room. I spent that night staring at the ceiling. I told myself it was just a moment, that I had control, that I hadn't done anything wrong. The next morning, Grace texted to check in. I invited her for coffee. She watched me closely, like she already knew. When David came down, shirtless as usual, she narrowed her eyes. He greeted her casually and left to get dressed. When he was gone, she leaned in and whispered, "He looks at you like a man, Helen, not a son." I tried to laugh it off, but she didn't smile. "Don't pretend you haven't noticed." I avoided her after that. Ella tried to talk to me the following week, said she felt like she didn't belong, that David wasn't the same lately. I told her he was just adjusting. She looked at me like she wanted to say more. Then she left the room. I knew what I was doing. I wasn't naive. I was hungry. For attention, for touch, for anything that reminded me I was still a woman. David gave me that. Every glance, every comment chipped away at the wall I was trying to hold up. I wore makeup more often. I smiled when he complimented me. I let the tension breathe instead of suffocating it. One afternoon, I found myself watching him swim in the backyard. Ella was inside. His skin glistened in the sun, and I stood by the window, unable to move. He saw me. He didn't look away. Neither did I. I felt like I was falling, slow and deliberate. I hadn't crossed the line, but I was walking along its edge, daring it to break. That night he passed me in the hallway, brushing his fingers along my arm. No one was around. He whispered, "You don't have to pretend with me." I said nothing. My breath caught. My body reacted before my mind could form a sentence. There was a knock on the front door. I jumped, stepping away. It was Grace. I didn't open it. I stood there behind the door, heart racing. When I turned around, David was standing in the hallway, watching me, and I didn't feel like his mother anymore. It happened on a night the rain wouldn't stop. The house was quiet. Charles was out of town. Ella was visiting her sister. I was in the living room, wrapped in a blanket, sipping wine. David came in, sat beside me, too close again. Neither of us spoke at first. The silence was thick, heavy with everything we hadn't said. He reached over and tucked a loose strand of hair behind my ear. I didn't stop him. He touched my face. His thumb rested on my jaw, and I closed my eyes. Then he kissed me. Soft, slow, like he'd been waiting. I let him. For a full moment, I let it happen. Then guilt hit me like a wave. I pushed him away, stood up, heart pounding. "No," I said, barely able to speak. "We can't. Don't ever do that again." He looked at me, unreadable. "You kissed me back," he said. I left the room without another word. I spent that night scrubbing my skin raw in the shower. My reflection disgusted me. I couldn't sleep. I kept seeing the look in his eyes, the way my body had betrayed my mind. I told myself I had stopped, yet that nothing had truly happened. But I knew better. The line was gone. Whatever boundary once existed between mother and son had been destroyed. The next morning, Ella was gone. Her things were missing. I found a note in David's room, folded, and left on the pillow. It wasn't addressed to anyone, but the words cut deep. I saw enough. I won't be part of this. I confronted David. She saw us? He didn't deny it. He just shrugged. She's not blind. I demanded to know if he told her anything. He laughed. I didn't have to. She saw what she needed to see. Charles came home that evening, tired and irritable. He asked where Ella was. I lied, said she'd gone to visit family. He didn't believe me. Something's off, he said. You've been weird for weeks. And David, he's too comfortable here. Later, he found the wine glass and blanket still in the living room. He held them like evidence. Who are you drinking with? He asked. I said nothing. He stared at me, then at the stairs. You think I'm stupid? I broke. My voice shook. There's something you should know. He sat down. I couldn't meet his eyes. I told him I'd made a mistake, that something happened between me and David. I didn't go into detail. I didn't need to. His silence was louder than shouting. He stood up, looked at me like I was someone he'd never met. Then he walked out the door without saying a word. David came downstairs hours later asking where Charles went. I told him. You told him? He asked. I nodded. He didn't seem surprised. Maybe now he knows what you really need, he said. I slapped him. He didn't flinch.